The US Navy just showed off the most powerful weapon ever made. An aircraft carrier with lasers that can quickly destroy enemy hypersonic weapons from countries like China and Iran is an example of this technology. This new technology could tip the scales in the growing competition between these world powers. However, what makes this ship so strong? And can it really defend itself against any enemy threat? Welcome to our tour of the United States laser aircraft carrier, which can destroy all of China and Iran's hypersonic weapons. Since 1949, when the People's Republic of China was founded, the US and China have had a past that has shaped their relationship. They have worked together and competed with each other. Both times, the two countries worked together in times when things were tense. In the 1970s, they made their relationship official, but problems still arise because of old issues such as Taiwan's status, disagreements over land in the South China Sea, and worries about human rights. Their economies are closely linked, which makes them the two biggest in the world by GDP, even though they have problems. Their connection is complicated, which shows how both countries are trying to be the most powerful in the world, taking care of their common economic goals at the same time. But there has been a rise in animosity in the last few years. In August 2020, the Chinese People's Liberation Army Rocket Force shot several ballistic missiles into the northern part of the South China Sea from mainland China. This was meant to look like an attack on a ship. This was just one of many drills meant to send a message of caution to the US. Because of the AUS spy plane, the US probably had a good view of China's missile attacks. During the flights, the RC-135 Cobra ball was in the Red Sea. The DF-21D and the bigger DF-26B ballistic missiles were allegedly tested by China. The DF-21D is a high-tech anti-ship rocket that can hit aircraft carrier strike groups from more than 1,450 kilometers away. The U.S. National Air and Space Intelligence Center was the first to report on it, pointing out how important it was for naval battle. By 2009, the rockets were even better because special satellites were launched that gave them accurate directions. After only 1 year, the U.S. Department of Defense confirmed that China had made this rocket workable and that it could hit moving targets like U.S. aircraft carriers. Some people think that this weapon uses maneuverable re-entry vehicles with terminal guidance systems. This gives it an advantage when it comes to hitting the US Navy, which knows about the danger. Changed its defenses, focused on ballistic missile defense in deep water. But the task is still very big. It's not easy to stop a fast-moving mobile missile like the DF-21D. Traditional defenses like the SM-3 missile might not work as well as they should, which could lead to a move toward more advanced systems like the SM-6, which started being used in 2013 despite having a scary image. There is doubt about how well the DF-21D works. Some analysts say that it might not totally destroy a carrier, but it might make it useless. Also, the missile's success depends on being able to find its target correctly, which is hard to do without coordinated help from satellites, radar, and reconnaissance aircraft. It hasn't been shown that the rocket can hit a moving, well-defended target at sea, which has made some people wonder if this really means the end of the US Navy's dominance in aircraft carriers. The DF-21D made its public debut at a military show in Beijing in 2015. It was a sign of China's growing military power. The DF-26B is an intermediate-range missile that can go between 1,800 and 3,500 miles. Its first known live test took place in 2020, which got a lot of attention and criticism around the world, especially from the US and its allies. These ranges are far enough to hit American ships at sea, but not close enough to attack the Chinese launch sites in return. It is a mobile two-stage rocket that was shown for the first time in September 2015 at a military parade. On land and water, the missile can be used for both regular and nuclear attacks. It has a range of 4,000 kilometers. The missile can carry a weapon that weighs between 1,200 and 1,800 kilograms. It might be able to attack faraway places like Guam if it had to. One of the most interesting things about the DF-26B is that it can target and possibly destroy big US Navy aircraft carriers. These cruise missiles will be very useful if the US helps Taiwan when China tries to attack and take over the island. When you add up all of the other countries' aircraft carriers, they don't even come close to the US's huge and powerful Navy. China might not need its own supercarriers after all. It could instead hurt US ships with its ballistic weapons. Some people call the DF-21D the carrier killer. It's not as powerful as the DF-26, but it can still be very useful. It is said that both rockets have warheads that can move very quickly and change direction to get around defenses. It's possible that these weapons can't be stopped yet. To keep its sea power, the US needs to move quickly. That's where the Meteor project comes in. For this US Navy project, people are making a new tool to fight China's ships. It will be an HPM weapon, which stands for High Power Radio Weapon. To mess with or damage enemy electronics, it sends out short bursts of microwave energy. Ships should have this technology by 2026, but it won't be used for cooking. Instead, it will use electromagnetic energy to hurt or mess up the technology of its enemies. It's being worked on because it's cheap, easy to use, and covers a lot of ground. With a $31.3 million contract, Raytheon is building these systems to help the Navy use directed energy to protect itself against different threats. The Navy will use this system as its first high-powered microwave weapon. The Army, Navy, and Air Force are all working on this type of directed energy weapon to fight low-cost robotic aerial systems. It will be different from the other directed energy weapons the Navy uses. The Meteor sample will not work like the real thing. It won't use a targeted light beam to damage its targets. Instead, it will use microwave energy. They believe this method will work against anti-ship ballistic weapons like those used by China's military. The HPM weapon is much better than other types of guns in many ways. Unlike lasers, an HPM weapon can do a variety of things, from minor damage like jamming to more serious damage, based on what is needed. When sailors use the HPM weapon, they can hit with more control than when they use other weapons. Some HPM systems can see more than lasers, which makes them better for quickly going after groups of drones and other threats. This new weapon might be the Navy's first choice for stopping China's advanced rockets once it gets strong enough. Since an HPM's beams move at the speed of light, it's very hard for China's rockets to avoid or get around them. Before they even knew where the heat was coming from, they would be in a cloud of their own smoke. An HPM weapon has a deep clip that can hold a lot of bullets, just like other directed energy weapons. HPM guns don't need to be physically reloaded with ammunition like other kinetic weapons do. As long as they're hooked up to a power source, they should be able to keep shooting. The low cost per shot is another great thing. This alone changes the game. Since low-cost attacking weapons have become more popular in recent years, people all over the world are looking for even cheaper ways to defend themselves against them. Right now, the US has to fight $1,000 drones with $1 million weapons, which is unfair and can't last. Things are even worse at sea because ships only carry a small number of defense missiles and can't easily get more until they get back to base, which could be thousands of miles away. The latest battle in the Red Sea between the US Navy and Houthi forces shows how important it is to have better weapons for defense. An anti-ship missile, a drone, and an explosive boat have been used by the Houthis to attack US troops. To fight back, the US had to use pricey defense weapons. Chinese advanced hypersonic missiles and other cheap weapons from around the world pose a danger. The new HPM weapon could be very helpful. It would help the Navy deal with threats without having to use expensive missiles on small strikes. The US Navy is working hard to make the HPM weapon better and start using it. This year, they asked for more than $9 million for the Meteor project. In 2024, when the project was called Red Cat, they asked for $13.5 million. No one knows why the name changed, but the goal hasn't changed. Ballistic rockets are used by the Navy until the HPM weapon is ready. People value these missiles a lot for both attack and defense. The US Navy also has a large reserve. The Navy needs the SM-6 missile the most out of all of them. The SM-6, or Standard Weapon 6, is a weapon that can do more than one thing. It can attack aircraft, protect against terminal ballistic missiles, and attack ships. It hits its targets in the sky with a blast fragmentation warhead. It can be used as a master of any type of weapon. The normal ARM is a two-part missile with a booster and a second stage. It looks a lot like the standard RIM-156A missile, a radio seeker that is bigger than the one in the AIM-120C AMREM missile is used. This gun can work in different ways. With its radar, it can find its way to the target, follow radar signals coming from a different source, or use the cooperative interaction feature to aim over the horizon. Along with the standard Missile 3, it can also be used for final ballistic missile defense. The SM-6 missile can stop both high-altitude and low-flying anti-ship missiles and also defend against terminal-phase ballistic missiles. Its range is longer than that of the SM-2 missiles that came before it. It can also be used as a fast weapon to attack ships. There are two modes of seeker on the SM-6. In other words, it can find targets by sending out its own radar data or using the radar of another ship. This lets it find land-based cruise missiles even when they are hidden, like behind a mountain. The SM-6 takes the SM-2's aerodynamics, the SM-3's power, and the AIM-120 ARAM's front end and puts them all together. Some reports say it could go as far as 250 nautical miles, but the official range is 130 nautical miles. The SM-6 Block IA missile is getting GPS direction from the US Navy. This will let it hit surface targets if needed. It's not likely to be the first choice though, because it costs more than other land attack weapons like the Tomahawk cruise missile. In February 2016, the Secretary of Defense stated that the SM-6 would also be changed so that it could be used against ships. The SM-6 Block IB is almost finished being built. This version will have a bigger motor for longer range and faster speeds. It is planned to reach hypersonic speeds, which will make it very good at hitting targets on the ground or in the air. Production is set to begin in late fiscal year 2024. The head of the U.S. Missile Defense Agency, Vice Admiral John Hill, says that the SM-6 is the only weapon the country has right now that can shoot down hypersonic threats that are very agile. A lot of things make the SM-6 a unique weapon. For example, it blends the SM-3 series solid rocket booster and dual thrust rocket motors with the SM-2 series airframe and the seeker and nose cone of an advanced medium-range air-to-air missile. The missile is different from other normal missiles because it is a hybrid. As an example, it is the only missile in its family that has an active seeker for direction at the end, which it took from the advanced medium-range air-to-air missile and changed. The active seeker lets the missile hit targets that are out of range of naval radars, which can only see so far because of their power output and the way the Earth is curved. Because the SM-6 can intercept over the horizon, it is a key part of the Navy's integrated fire control counter-air idea. It can also work with other sensors through networks, such as the cooperative engagement capability. An SM-6 can fight in areas where no other air defense missile has been able to. In 2016, it set a record for the longest-range anti-air warfare battle in U.S. history during a test that proved this. Navy events. To give you more information, the SM-6 is a 1.6-ton missile with a 140-pound blast fragmentation warhead that goes off using a radar and contact fuse device. It is propelled by a two-stage system. The missile can reach more than 110,000 feet, go into space, and hit speeds of up to Mach 3.5. This is faster than the Sur-71, which is known as the fastest jet that can breathe air in aircraft history. An SM-6 can hit targets up to 230 miles away with great accuracy thanks to its inertial tracking and active and semi-active terminal radar homing. Because they have different strengths, the Meteor HPM weapon is more likely to work with the SM-6 rocket than to replace it. The SM-6 and the HPM are both very strong weapons, but neither is perfect by itself. Each has its own flaws, but they can make up for each other's flaws when they work together. The US Navy could make a defense and attack system by putting these two weapons together, able to protect its ships from many types of threats, no matter how expensive, fast, big, or maneuverable they are. We're going to talk about the Aegis combat system next. The system is an American military weapon, and its job is to find, track, and target threats. The Missile and Surface Radar Division of RCA made it in the beginning, but Lockheed Martin now makes it. It's based on the AN/SPY-1 radar, which is a strong radar that can find and track. It can handle more than 100 targets and guide rockets at the same time. In 1973, the device was tried out for the first time on the USS Norton Sound. This battle system handles different kinds of threats, like attacks from the air, the ground, and the water, with computer-based controls. The USS Ticonderoga was the first ship to have Aegis. It was commissioned in 1983 and sent to war 6 months later. At first, the Navy used the ship design of Spruance-class destroyers to make Aegis cruisers. The USS Bunker Hill was the first Aegis ship to have the vertical launching system, which made it easier to shoot missiles and gave the ship more firepower. Later, the USS Princeton showed off the improved AN/SPY-1B radar, and the USS Chosin, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, was the first ship to use the ANUIK-43 computers, which make working faster. It was launched in 1987 and has the Aegis system on board. The Mark 41 vertical launching system was added to these ships, starting with the USS Bunker Hill. Earlier models of these ships had a different missile launcher system. The Aegis system was first used by the US Navy. It is now also used by the fleets of Japan, Spain, Norway, South Korea, and Australia. Starting in 2022, the Royal Canadian Navy will also use it. 110 ships with Aegis have been sent out, and 71 more are planned. Aegis is also being made for NATO's system to defend against missiles. The Aegis battle system was first created by the Missile and Surface Radar Division of RCA. This division later joined General Electric and was later sold to Martin Marietta, which is now part of Lockheed Martin. The US Navy began working on Aegis in the 1960s to protect ships from Soviet anti-ship missiles, which were becoming a bigger danger. The system, which is called after the shield of the Greek god Zeus, was first used on Navy ships in the 1970s and worked well. In 1973, the Aegis system was first put on the USS Norton Sound for testing. It was then put on other cruisers, starting with the USS Ticonderoga. Over time, Aegis was added to more modern ships, such as the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, which had better radar missile systems and other improvements. The system is always changing. For example, current ships have advanced radars like the INNSP-7 and NSP-6 that make their ballistic missile defense better. As part of the U.S. Missile Defense Agency's Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense Program, the Aegis battle system is made better to protect against short and medium-range ballistic missiles. It is part of both the U.S. National Missile Defense Strategy and NATO's European Missile Defense Strategy. Ships with the Mk-41 vertical launch system and Aegis can stop ballistic missiles in 2 stages, after the boost and at the terminal. For mid-course interceptions outside of the atmosphere, the RIM-161 Standard Missile 3 is used. For final phase interceptions inside the atmosphere, the RIM-156 Standard Missile 2 Extended Range Block 4 is used. An improved form of the SM-2ER, the SM-6 missile, has a longer range and can be used for both air and missile defense. The Aegis BMD skills were improved by adding new signal processing technology to the SPY-1 radar. This made it easier to find and follow threats. The multi-mission signal processor makes radar work better, letting it respond faster and engage a wider range of threats more effectively, even in tough places like littorals and places where there is electronic interference. At the beginning of April 2022, the Aegis ballistic missile defense system was only on armed ships from the US and Japan. The NSPY-6 AESA radar on the newest flight, 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, starting with the USS Jack H. Lucas, is 30 times more accurate than the previous SPY-1D radar. This makes air and missile defense much better. This radar will also be added to Flight 208 planes in the future. Aegis Ashore is a land-based form of the Aegis BMD system. It is already in use in Romania and will soon be in use in Poland as well. Japan canceled its plans to send Aegis ashore, but it could still be sent to the AUS military base in Guam. The Integrated Air and Missile Defense Battle Command System of the U.S. Army wants to link Aegis BMD radars to other defense systems like Patriot, NASAMS, and THAAD. This will make a network of sensors that cover land and sea. The air will help find and stop ballistic missile threats better. Thanks for seeing. Click on the link that shows up on your screen to watch one of our other videos. Enjoy your stay here. See you then.